Overwatch is back. Literally, they just dropped the 2. I was unfortunately out when the Overwatch spotlight dropped on the 4th of February, but I knew it was cooking when my phone notifications went crazy because everyone I knew who was watching it immediately clocked Domina as my kind of character. To be fair, I can't say they're wrong. The spotlight contained all sorts: the new subclass system, a preview of a new Talon vs Overwatch event, and 5 new heroes. Jesus Christ. But what I really care about is the story development, because Overwatch's very own League of Villains just came under new management. In our first full animated cinematic for 2 years, and only our 4th since the game's Overwatch 2 re-release in 2022, the newest hero Vendetta stakes her claim over Talon. The reigning champion Doomfist won't back down without a fight, and the resulting brawl for control in Talon's headquarters sees Vendetta hurl Doomfist from a window and assume control over the organisation. Doomfist fans are crashing out. Vendetta fans are staying kind of quiet, hoping she doesn't get nerfed again, and as someone who absolutely loves both these characters, I find myself casually intrigued. Overwatch, like most live service games, struggles to move its story forward in a satisfying way, because it's tied to a perpetual status quo that must be maintained for the game's conceit to still work. Dead by Daylight gets a cheat at this by having the entity and the trials occur outside of the normal passage of time and space, meaning the setting just develops outwards rather than forwards. But Overwatch has never had that excuse, and when the planned PvE modes that were designed to develop the story forwards got mothballed, the setting almost completely stalled. Until now. Look, I know this channel's been almost exclusively about Dead by Daylight since, well, forever. But when I started out 5 years ago, I did intend to mix together DBD and Overwatch content. That plan kind of fell apart though. At the same time as Dead by Daylight brought out a long run of really exciting original characters, and lore expansion worth talking about through the tomes, Overwatch shut down its lore-heavy PvE content plan and moved towards a Battle Pass system, icing its story content in the process. Until today. This video is meant to be kind of a throwback to what I originally intended this channel to be, and maybe testing the waters for the future to see how much overlap there is in my audience that might be interested in more videos like this on Overwatch. Besides, Cassie needs a game she can play without using any hands, and I think we can get her to Diamond on Torbjorn by the end of the season. So, welcome everybody to the bloody story of Doomfist, Vendetta, and the future of Overwatch's biggest villainous organisation, Talon. Let's start by answering one simple question. How did we get here? Just like everything in the world of Overwatch, it all started with the Omnic Crisis, effectively World War III, where factories across the world called Omniums began mass-producing robotic troops that almost wiped out humanity. An organisation of oddballs, soldiers and superhumans rose up in humanity's darkest hour to shut the Omniums down and save the human race. But they're pretty forgettable. This group called, Ogre Hatch, I think? Yeah, they're not really relevant to this part of the story, because what we care about is actually happening in Nigeria. An area of the world where the Omnic Crisis didn't seem to be that big of a deal. A lot of countries in Overwatch's world still bear the scars of the Omnic Crisis decades later, like Russia, South Korea, Australia and the UK. But Africa seems to be relatively stable and prosperous beyond the Anubis God program in Egypt. This is most apparent in Numbani, a city-state near Nigeria that's incredibly prosperous, with some of the highest standards of living and best human-omnic relations anywhere in the world. The implication, I think, here is that when the Omnica Corporation first built the factories that produced the Omnics, they prioritised constructing them in industrialised nations first, which is why Africa wasn't hit as heavily by the crisis as many nations in the global north. But this is never stated anywhere as far as I know, so take it with a grain of salt. Side note, I love the way Overwatch handles a technologically advanced and decolonised Africa, and you can really see it when you're on the Numbani map especially. A product of this new era of progress for Africa was Akande Ogundimu, a young heir to a plastic company in Nigeria. This young man is a long way from being the Doomfist we'll eventually know him to be. He started out as a key part of the family business Ogundimu Synergies, who took part in competitive martial arts on the side. But everything changed when he lost his arm. It's not entirely clear how he lost it, only that his family and connections resulted in his body effectively being rebuilt with Ogundimu prosthetics. This made him a better fighter than he'd ever been before, but disqualified him from competition, and the combination of competitive spirit and directionless lack of satisfaction would be picked up by Akinjinde Adeyemi, a mercenary who recruited Akande to his side. Akande didn't sign on for the money. He did it because with his skills, wealth and enhancements he was becoming a very powerful man, and he was getting frustrated that he couldn't put that power to use. Akinjinde, the second wielder of the fabled Doomfist-powered gauntlet, gave him an outlet for that in service of Talon, a terrorist organisation that blossomed in the wake of the Omnic Crisis. It wasn't long before Akande turned on his mentor, killing Akinjinde, seizing the gauntlet for himself, and fully inheriting the title of Doomfist, and a position in Talon's leadership. When Antonio Bartolotti, one of Talon's leaders, was killed by Blackwatch in the Retribution mission in Venice, he gave Bartolotti's seat on the council and all his illicit business connections to one of his associates, Augusto Vialli, leaving Bartolotti's daughter Marzia not just without her father, but without the criminal empire he had built under Talon's auspices. This proved to be a mistake that would cost Akande dearly, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Doomfist spent his time in service of his goals of constant global conflict, making alliances and bringing in new people by ensuring that he could offer what they wanted in service of his goals. He recruited Malga this way by effectively offering him free rein in the carnage Talon caused, and brokered an alliance of convenience with Ramatra and Null Sector. But before he could start making moves with them, an Overwatch strike team confronted him in Singapore. He put up a hell of a fight and wound up almost completely crippling Tracer, but Winston defeated him, and the gauntlet was put on display in the Numbani Heritage Museum while the man himself was imprisoned by Helix Securities. But not before sowing the seeds for Overwatch's downfall in the mind of one Gabriel Reyes. This began a long period where both Doomfist and Vendetta were effectively dormant, level grinding if you like, in their own ways. Young Marzia Bartolotti was earning a reputation of her own in the Colosseum fighting arenas, running her own crime syndicate in Italy while Doomfist watched his plans come together from his prison cell. Overwatch had dissolved, many of its former agents had fallen into Talon's payroll, and he maintained contact with a few loyalists preparing for his return to power. A return spurred on by the assassination of Tecarta Mondata in London. Doomfist's return was a sudden shock to the global system of order. With Reaper's help, he broke out of the Helix security facility, chewed through the OR-15 security robots in Numbani, and reclaimed his gauntlet. But his position in Talon was a little harder to take back. Remember Vialli, Antonio's business partner who Doomfist recruited after his death? Well, Vialli had all but taken over Talon in Akande's absence, and turned it from a terrorist cell into an organised crime syndicate. And he wasn't too pleased with the idea of Doomfist coming back to piddle away Talon's money on his crusade, so he ordered a hit on him at a meeting in Monte Carlo. That went about as well as you might think. Doomfist killed Vialli and effortlessly took his position back on Talon's ruling council, and this has been the status quo basically since 2017 when Doomfist arrived as a playable hero. But while Doomfist was doing, miscellaneous prison activities and Overwatch was falling apart, Vendetta was hard at work. She had become a bit of a heel, so to speak, in the fighting pits of the Colosseo, earning enough money to buy the hard-light blade the Palatine Fang, and her ruthlessness saw her carve out her own empire of crime in Italy, ripping Talon's teeth out of Venice while Vialli's weak, profit-driven leadership caused the organisation to rot from within. When Doomfist broke out of prison, Vendetta wasted no time making allies of her own. Well, maybe referring to Maximilian as an ally might be a bit kind. In the new story Vested Interests, she broke into his secure compound and he effectively offered her Doomfist's head on a plate, if she would spare his life and let him maintain his position on Talon's leading council. He claims that some of Doomfist's allies will likely fall in line should Vendetta take control, but others will likely break off or remain loyal to their old leader. We'll see how that holds up going forwards. Her second ally is one of the brand new heroes, who she spoke to in the short story The Upper Hand. Our new Vishkar poke tank, Vera Singaira. In this story, Marzia threatens to blackmail Vishkar into assisting her in her conquest by exposing Sanjay Korpal's dealings with Talon if Vyra doesn't help her. She wants access to Vishkar shielding technology for use in the arenas, and for other undisclosed nefarious purposes we don't really know yet, and while Vera complies, she makes it clear that her and Vishkar are not to be trifled with, and if Vendetta lets her down, she will not stick Vishkar's neck out to bail her out. And this takes us up to the cinematic The Reign of Talon, when Vendetta rocks up in Talon's base, cuts off Doomfist's arm and asserts her will over the assembled Talon figures. This is her operation now, and she's about to show the world what Talon's made of. Wait, where's Doomfist's body? She's standing around aura farming on his balcony like she just killed him, so he should have left a body behind, right? Right? Okay, I'm not going to beat around the me here. If you genuinely believe that Doomfist is dead after this cinematic, I have a bridge to sell you. Doomfist absolutely survives this. And not just because killing off a hero beloved by many players by a newcomer just waltzing in and offing him just a couple of months after she came out would absolutely reek of the term industry plant. Besides, Overwatch doesn't have full damage, everyone knows that. Vendetta upsetting the status quo and seemingly usurping Doomfist offers us a legitimately interesting question going forward for both characters. What's Doomfist gonna do now that he's not in charge of Talon anymore? And perhaps more pressingly, what will Talon look like under Vendetta's leadership? Obviously, we don't know exactly what Blizzard's writers have in mind. These are the guys that wrote Kiriko after all. They're not immune to breaking out the crack pipe in the writer's room. But it's clear that they've got some kind of long-term plan here, at least for this year's story arc. And if you were to ask me, I think, in the long term at least, Vendetta is in quite a lot of trouble. First of all, Doomfist's not dead, so what's he doing now? Is he going to come back on his own, maybe get his old Talon band back together, or side with some new people to crack back at Vendetta's Talon? With the recent departure of Sombra, Reaper and Widowmaker, there's a real chance Talon's original core 4 heroes will just form a new organisation around Doomfist. But I'm going to suggest a wild possible alternative. What if Doomfist got together with the Freaks? Rosie outfits him with some cybernetics to patch up his injuries, he gets a new fist and a nice punk-themed skin to go along with it, and he bonds with Hazard over their shared resentment towards Overwatch and the rules-based international order as a whole. Maybe the Freaks provide the manpower to see Doom return to Talon, and by the time Hazard and Rosie realise this actual terrorist they befriended is way above their pay grade, Doomfist has already swept them into his great game. A disillusioned young man fueled by resentment towards the system and pushed into extremism by a demagogue with an agenda for causing division could be a pretty salient story to tell in our modern age. But regardless of whether they decide to go with the Freaks, with a new old Talon forming around Doomfist or something new altogether, I don't think we're going to get a cinematic showdown with Doom reclaiming his gauntlet from Vendetta in a 1v1 anytime soon. If anything, I think Vendetta's leadership is going to crumble all on its own, and Doomfist will retake the throne mostly by consensus, simply because nobody trusts Vendetta to lead Talon anymore. Okay, so let's look at her list of allies within Talon and see how things measure up. In Vested Interest, Maximilian alludes to at least a couple of Talon members who won't exactly take the transition of power well. Doomfist still has his shooters in the organisation, and I mean that quite literally because, may I remind you, Reaper shot Marzia's dad right in his fucking face. His only line in the Reign of Talon cinematic itself is warning Doomfist about how dangerous Vendetta has become now, and how they need to get rid of her.
We should have put a stop to Vendetta a long time ago. She's a threat.
It makes total sense that he left Talon as soon as Vendetta took over. Especially if he knows Doomfist is still alive. Remember, Reaper was largely responsible for Doomfist's breakout and return to power. He's a genuine believer on some level in Akande's philosophy, and proved loyal to Doomfist without his gauntlet or any power at all, even conducting the operation to acquire Sigma on Doomfist's orders while he was still in prison. It's probably for the best for both parties that Reaper left Talon when he did, because as long as Reaper is part of Talon as an organisation, Vendetta's rule is not secure, both because he genuinely believes in Doomfist's cause, and because if she finds out what he did to her father, her very large sword might have something to say about it. Moira, however, is far more amenable to Vendetta's rule. Maximilian says as much when he claims Moira will work for whoever can keep her research funded, and Widowmaker's loyalty is dependent on keeping her constantly drugged, which presumably Moira maintains. So with Maximilian's money and her own criminal empire, Vendetta can certainly keep Moira in line. In theory, she should be able to keep Widowmaker under control by maintaining her supply of drugs, but that didn't work out so well in practice, now did it? Sombra has worked for Doomfist since he broke out of prison, and helped him take power back once he broke out, but she's never been completely sold on Doomfist's mission and has always had a bit more empathy and kindness than her boss. She seems to have bonded with Sigma, being his only real friend in the organisation, as she helps him manage his confusion. She repeatedly compromises missions because she isn't willing to fully deliver on executions or assassinations, and she pretty openly operates on her own agenda. But Doomfist keeps her around because what she offers to his cause is utterly irreplaceable, and he knows how to push her in the right direction enough of the time to make her worth the effort. Whether Vendetta has that kind of patience for Sombra or the ability to point her in the right direction like Doomfist did remains to be seen. She certainly appears uneasy when Vendetta announces her intentions, and Vendetta's whole no mistakes thing might put the Talon agent with an exceptionally spotty track record and a history of convenient mistakes under a level of scrutiny she's not ready for. And as if by magic, the Vengeance comic drops while I'm finishing off this script and answers some of these questions. The first days of Vendetta's leadership have been transformative, shall we say, with 3 leading figures in Talon defecting and Vendetta and Max bringing in a new cohort of allies to take on Overwatch. Unsurprisingly, Reaper got the hell out of there, and Sombra must have very quickly realised that Vendetta wasn't up for her chicanery, but wouldn't make her breaking off surprised me. Without Moira, she's liable to run out of those drugs that keep her brainwashed before too long, and who knows what will happen to Amelie's personality if she doesn't get them in time. Mauga seems easy to please. He likes to fight. He'll fight for anyone who offers him a good time, pays his bills, and gives him freedom from consequences, and it seems like Vendetta can probably offer that to him. She wants to go on the offensive, and Mauga is as offensive as they come. But much like Sombra, Mauga's a loose cannon, who regularly goes off mission or takes an interesting interpretation of his orders. But Doomfist has been able to control or at least work around Mauga for years, by getting the rest of Talon to help keep him on task, and, more importantly, by his strength, bravado and skill, continuing to earn Mauga's respect. Whether Vendetta can earn that respect, or tolerate his shenanigans in the same way, is a mystery for now, although any respect Mauga might have offered her for fighting Doomfist might not last when Talon learns she accidentally let him live. In the Vengeance Comes comic, Vendetta sends Mauga to Australia to broker an alliance with the Junkers and their infamous Junker Queen, which seems like a shockingly good diplomatic move. She's right that Mauga's power and general temperament aligns him well with the Junkers. They're probably the best possible people Mauga could be sent to negotiate with. I don't think he's going to fight the Queen though. Hell, I'm surprised if he'll get past the bouncer. But Mauga's self-interest might bite Vendetta in the ass should she try to put Mauga back on a shorter leash. Put yourself in Mauga's shoes for a second. You follow Talon for the monies and the funnies. You're in Junkertown drinking and fighting and playing volleyball with landmines or whatever, and then Vendetta calls you. Overwatch is knocking my door down. Sigma's depressurized the entire of Venice because he missed this week's episode of Countdown. And, oh yeah, Doomfist isn't actually dead, so please come back to Italy and help me out, now. Sorry, honey, I don't think he's coming back. Mauga fits into the landscape of Junkertown a little bit too well, and if he enjoys his time in Australia more than he enjoys being Vendetta's lackey, seeing him defect is very much in the cards. Sigma is the wild card. He doesn't really understand he's working for a terrorist cell and would probably carry on his work undisturbed if, nobody told him what was going on and Sombra and Moira stuck around to keep him company. But Vendetta hasn't worked with Sigma before. There's honestly no telling what could happen. If something does go wrong, maybe Sigma realises that Akande's missing, or Vendetta asks too much of him, or Sombra leaves and tries to take him with her. Sigma going rogue would be something that not just Vendetta, not just Talon, but everyone would have cause to be worried about. Not saying this is necessarily likely, but if it does happen, that's a big problem. Emery might be in a similar boat. He's a mind-controlled mercenary, seemingly in Vendetta's service, but he has Freya trying to save him, so I guess we'll need to see more about what's going to happen with him. That just leaves Domina and Maximilian, Vendetta's corporate partners, and the characters with whom Vendetta has the most detailed relationships thus far. Vera Singania is a VP at the Vishka Corporation, a company with a struggling public image that Vendetta is blackmailing with the threat of revealing their involvement with a terrorist organisation. That is powerful blackmail, but it is also all Marzia has to hold up her end of the bargain. A business relationship seemingly hinging on a single threat of blackmail is extremely dangerous. A lot of people are sniffing around both Talon and Vishkar right now, and if the nature of their business relationship were to somehow get revealed, there would be nothing to keep Vishkar from breaking away and seeking retribution. As to who could blow the whistle like that and sabotage operations between Vishkar and Talon, literally anybody in Talon could do it. Sombra, Reaper, Mauga, Doomfist himself, everybody in Talon's inner circle knows that Sanjay worked with Talon for years, so any of them who wanted to remove Vendetta's leverage, sabotage Domina, or see Doomfist return to power, could just spill the beans and let Overwatch clean up the resultant mess. Hell, Symmetra is doubting Vishkar and Sanjay more than ever. If she figures it out, they could be rumbled from outside Talon altogether. But when I'm thinking of who could double-cross Vendetta by strategically disseminating information, one name jumps to mind before any other. A slippery weasel of a man who has backstabbed Talon's leaders several times before to elevate his own standing, or save his own skin. Someone who's held power in Talon for as long as we've known him, and enabled Vendetta's takeover of the organisation because he knew the right things about the right people to destabilise Doomfist, and saw better offer when it was pointing a sword at him. Yeah, it's Maximilian. Max has been Talon's bagman for a very long time, entering the scene not long after Doomfist himself, but the downfall of every Talon leader since his induction has left a trail of breadcrumbs that has always led back to him. Maximilian sold out Doomfist in Havana during the events of Storm Rising. The strike team captured him, and this resulted in Doomfist's arrest in Singapore, and Viali taking control once Doomfist was incarcerated. Max then supervised Akande's takeover from Viali once he broke out, hosting him at his casino in Monte Carlo and restoring Doomfist to Talon's throne. And he was the one who arranged for Vendetta's takeover, told her how to win Moira and Widowmaker over, and gave her access to Talon's information and financials on his poker chip, effectively giving her the tools she needed to take Doomfist down. The departures of Reaper, Sombra and Widowmaker and the reassignment of Mauga meant Talon was understaffed, and Maximilian oversaw a series of negotiations and alliances to fill the ranks. The Deadlock Gang, the Hashimoto clan, and the mercenary Freya have all been recruited by Max to help their onslaught on Overwatch, but as per Matsuya's dialogue in Vengeance Comes, it's clear that Max is the one paying the bills and managing these deals, not her. And that means if he's dealt with, captured, killed, whatever, her whole empire comes crumbling down. The Queen might be able to go anywhere and fight anything, but if the King falls, the game is still lost. Throughout all his appearances, Maximilian has been exceedingly reliable at doing the same three things: moving money around, making deals, and crumbling when pressured. He is both Matsuya's greatest ally and her biggest liability, because there are so many ways he could turn on her. Overwatch could capture him again and force him to sell her out. Doomfist or one of his loyalists could threaten him just like Vendetta did. Or Max could see Vendetta as outliving her usefulness and try to take over himself. Max destabilising her rule is practically expected behaviour from him at some point. And if Doomfist, Viali, and Doomfist again all saw him bring their reigns to ruin, what makes you think Vendetta is going to fare any better? To be clear, I'm just trying to make the point here that Vendetta has an incredibly difficult task ahead of her now that she's actually in the top job. In a sense, carving up Doomfist was the easy part, because now she's the leader of an international terrorist organisation, held in her position mostly by threats, blackmail and a bit of aura farming, when she didn't even successfully kill off her predecessor. Even discounting Doomfist himself, she has to make sure that Reaper isn't going to kill her in her sleep, keep Mauga from going off mission, make sure Max isn't planning on selling her out, keep the money flowing so that Moira and her mercenaries stay on side, treat Sigma nicely so that he doesn't suck the entire Italy into a black hole, and hope Sombra doesn't leak the truth about Vishkar so that Domina doesn't peel the flesh off her bones. Oh yeah, and there's Overwatch to worry about. Remember, the Null Sector storyline that we just finished wrapped up with Ramatra voluntarily stepping back from command, because he basically got everything he wanted, and no longer gives a fuck about what humans do to each other. So after that kind of Pyrrhic victory, the good guys deserve an unambiguous win here, and narratively speaking, Vendetta has a very punchable face. Obviously, Overwatch fans want to see Overwatch succeed, and dethroning Vendetta would be a great way to do that. But even a lot of Talon fans don't like Vendetta for what she did to Doomfist, so everyone's kind of rooting against her. A lot of people I've seen seem to be considering Doom as kind of a jobber to Vendetta, someone who gets unjustly beaten solely to glaze whoever beat them. But I think Vendetta is going to be that for Overwatch, someone for the good guys to beat the shit out of so they can get a win and legitimize Overwatch as a powerful force for good again. In a narrative sense, Vendetta's kind of doing Doomfist a favour. By removing him from Talon's leadership for a bit, Vendetta has allowed Overwatch to score a victory against Talon without just taking out the big bad in a single story arc. And we're getting an Overwatch vs Talon event coming up with a new season, so it's clear that a straight up confrontation between Talon and Overwatch is the point of the next big story arc. So Vendetta's facing not just problems from within Talon, but from outside of it as well. Overwatch as an organisation has never really been more back than it is now, and as an inexperienced new leader, I suspect the reality of how hard her life is going to be now will be hitting her like a truck. But she's not just in danger of Talon rejecting her, or Overwatch defeating her. She's got an even bigger threat looming over her, like the shadow of a grand piano over her head that's slowly getting bigger. The overall narrative direction and sustainability of Overwatch as a game and as a world, because her succeeding at her goals is just not compatible with the way Overwatch is built. Let's look again at what Marzia actually wants to do now that she's in charge.
No more mistakes. No more weakness. I will lead us out of the shadows to seize what should have always been ours. And the world will kneel. A new Talon Empire begins now.
Okay, so standard world domination supervillain stuff. Makes sense. Well, tough luck on that one, mate, because if it's world domination you want, you are not going to get it, because there are characters in the world of Overwatch. Characters like Kiriko and Mercy that are really good at selling skins, and will be much harder to sell skins for if they've been cut into little pieces by Vendetta because she took over the world. Overwatch demands that its world stay in a status quo of perpetual conflict to keep the game going, and that means that Vendetta can never truly win. She can never get what she wants, and the longer she spends as the leader of Talon, the more incompetent she's going to look, when she keeps failing to actually accomplish her goal. Now, if only there was a character whose entire philosophy was built around eternal conflict, someone for whom there is no defined end goal where they win, because the point is in the fighting. Someone who can broadly maintain the status quo and still get exactly what he wants. Because as long as he has Overwatch and its agents to fight, he's happy. I know someone like that. If only they hadn't just chopped his arm off. Within Overwatch's framework, Doomfist's ideology is completely sustainable for a main villain for the game's heroes to fight over and over again. He has no reason to ever stop, and if he ever looks like he's going to win too easily, he'll actively make it harder for himself, so he can still have a challenge. That's why he funded Orisa's construction through the Adawe Genius Grant. He actively supported Efi custom building an adversary built to fight him. It's why he worked with Null Sector to support their invasion, not just to start conflict, but to force Overwatch to band back together and give him something worth fighting. Every day that Overwatch has to get off their asses and try to save the world by pushing a payload or negotiating with a chud robot or shooting a Yeti in the head with an icicle, Doomfist is winning, even if he's losing. For so many reasons, I believe Vendetta's leadership of Talon is not sustainable. Her time in the captain's chair will be swift, probably quite unpleasant for her in the long term, and be characterised by eventual failure, which will see Doomfist returning to power. He's an antagonist practically built for the setting, and the longer Vendetta remains in his chair, the more pointless both characters will start to become. Doomfist is nothing without his crusade for eternal battle, and Vendetta is never going to accomplish her goal either. So, if Doomfist does retake Talon's throne, where does that leave Vendetta? If Doom's destiny is always to lead Talon, where does Vendetta fit into this puzzle? Let me answer this question with a question. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I am being serious here. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I don't blame you if you haven't. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. In Star Wars, the Sith operate by something called the Rule of Two. They have a master and an apprentice, and the rite of passage to become a Sith master is for an apprentice to rise up and kill that master. The Sith Masters know this when they take on an apprentice. Hell, they were probably an apprentice who killed their master to get there. They know they are almost certainly going to die to one of their apprentices someday, but they take on an apprentice anyway, because it gives them a chance to truly prove their mastery of the Force, and ensure that each successive generation of the Sith is more powerful than the one that came before. Think of how Darth Sidious wound up being killed by his apprentice Anakin in Return of the Jedi, or how Sidious in turn killed his master Darth Plagueis. It creates a life cycle of constant tests of strength, because the Sith religion fundamentally follows the principle of might makes right. If you aren't strong enough to defend yourself from a challenger or a subordinate, you don't deserve to keep the power you have. If this is starting to sound a little bit familiar to you, I'm sure you can see where this is going. Doomfist similarly believes in the rule of the strong over the weak, but not even the strongest can rule forever. If you look at their history, Vendetta and Doomfist are honestly very similar people. They're both rich kids, all grown up, denied something they desperately felt they deserved. Doomfist was denied the chance to compete due to his cybernetics, and sought out a challenge by becoming a mercenary, then a terrorist, then basically a supervillain, after killing his mentor and taking his gauntlet and title for his own. Similarly, Vendetta was denied her birthright, when Doomfist denied her seat on Talon's High Council, and sought to challenge him for his throne. Vendetta is in many ways a younger Doomfist, but Akande became the leader of Talon not just because he wanted it, but because Talon was ready to receive him, and he was ready to actually kill his mentor and take his throne. He was ready to take on that position of leadership, and Vendetta just isn't. Well, not yet anyway. Hope we can all agree now that Vendetta's rule is unlikely to last, but as to what will happen after she's deposed, I have a thought. When Doom takes the throne back, whenever it may be, Maximilian is almost certainly a dead man walking. He betrayed Doomfist directly by opening the door to Vendetta, and that isn't something you survive doing. If you need someone to verify that claim, go ask Viali. But I think Vendetta should have Maximilian's seat on Talon's High Council as Doomfist's presumptive successor, once he's no longer capable of leading the organisation. Think about it. Overwatch's heroes age in real time. Doomfist is 47 now, and while he's still in amazing condition, he's been doing Talon shit for over 20 years now. His physical peak is almost certainly behind him, and losing that scrap with Vendetta could be a warning sign for him that he can't keep this up forever. It would be a really rewarding arc for him to effectively be training his own successor, with the knowledge that she will kill him eventually when the time is right. His mission must outlive him, and if it means imparting that knowledge to Marzia so she can dethrone him and fully take over Talon when she's ready, then that's what's got to happen. It would be great for her as well. She's skilled enough to fight, but not strong enough to lead, and effectively lurking in Doomfist's shadow waiting for her moment would give her a world-class perspective on how to lead a terrorist cell, how to get the most out of your operatives, how much leeway you can give them and how you can make them lock in when you need them to, how to make alliances not by threatening or blackmailing like a mobster, like her father, but by negotiation, manipulation, or even inspiring genuine loyalty like a leader, like Doomfist has been doing for the past 20 years. Ever since 2016, Overwatch has had a recurring theme of old heroes passing the torch to their younger counterparts, and Doomfist passing leadership of Talon over to Vendetta when the time is right would be a nice villainous parallel to that. And while Vendetta has way too many enemies and way too little experience to lead Talon right now, that doesn't mean she can never have that. Once the reign of Talon is over and Vendetta inevitably falls from power again, I'd like to see her given that chance to earn her throne. It would be on brand for Doomfist to recognise her strength and keep her on side. And when the day finally comes that she is ready, that Talon is ready for a change in leadership, she doesn't hesitate this time. Maybe she can even wield the gauntlet someday. If it fit on a kid's hand, why not hers? It is worth noting that Vendetta does already wear a gauntlet, shoulder length on her left hand. And while Akande's Doomfist gauntlet is worn on his right hand, both the official pieces of artwork that we've seen for Akinjinde, the second Doomfist, had him wearing the gauntlet on his left hand. Just saying, a refit of the Doomfist gauntlet to replace the one on Vendetta's left arm would not be the first remodel the Doomfist gauntlet has had to accommodate a new owner inheriting it. Just putting that out there. Let Akande Ogundimu, the successor, pass the mantle on to the fourth Doomfist, Matsuya Bartolotti the She-Wolf, so she may continue his fight long after his war is over. Maybe this will happen the way I see it. Maybe it won't. Maybe Vendetta will be out the door as quickly as she came in. Maybe she'll be in charge for a year until the storyline changes in 2027. She might even be in charge forever. Maybe she'll sign on to Talon after she's deposed. Maybe she'll be captured by Overwatch, killed by Reaper, or sold out by Maximilian. Maybe Doomfist is even really dead. Yeah, pull the other one, it's got bells on. But more to the point, it's going to be fun finding out, isn't it? This is what I've missed about Overwatch. The Blizzard creative people on Team 4 worked really hard to give Overwatch a very fleshed out setting with a rich backstory, and seeing characters playing around in it like a sandpit again is super refreshing. I've missed it. I don't know whether I'm going to make another video like this again, depends how it does and how Overwatch's new commitment to story content plays out going forwards in the long term, but I do know I am really glad I made this video. Kind of feels like a bit of a treat to myself. Back to Dead by Daylight as normal next week, when we'll be talking about hook incentives. Guess I'll see you then.